Hey, what's up everybody? It's Josh. Now, I wanted to do this video about crystals. I've tried to do this like 4 times today, but I keep getting distracted and interrupted. And it's when I was a kid, I used to go to the high desert with my parents, camping every year, and there wasn't a lot to do out there. It's hot. I'd go out into the hills with my brother and I'd find crystals. And I was always fascinated with quartz crystals, with amethysts, with all the different natural formations that crystals take. And from the time I was about 8 or 9, I was really, into collecting them, and I had a bunch, and I would always have a bunch of rocks on my shelf. And as the years progressed, I realized there was more than aesthetic value in these stones, apparently. And many people believe that crystals have inherent properties that allow them to heal, to help people meditate, to relax, various things. So my research into that brought me to my rational skepticism, of course, and I see all these people making claims that crystals do this, crystals do that amethyst does this, that lapis is cooling and helps people to get along, and that amethyst is for love, and I have this selenite wand here. There's claims people use for healing. My thought is, why? Where do these ideas come from that these stones have these particular properties? Now, I know that there's some ancient lore that talks about particular stones, but much of this, if you do the research and look deep enough, much of it is made up. Made up with common sense in mind, that this color of this particular stone must have this property because of the color or because of the shape. Sometimes people will use a phallic shaped stone for phallic type practices, or not, sorry, that didn't come out right. Whatever the stone's shape, people have always used that as kind of a guiding principle as to the efficacy or usefulness of the stone or the crystal. Now, I'm very into stones and crystals. The whole idea behind a crystal is that it has the crystalline structure, arranges the atoms in a certain way that they believe that it can be used for informational purposes, storage of information. People came up with many theories on these crystal skulls that were appearing around the world, which turned out to be, most of the best ones were totally fake. And but people don't necessarily know what the crystals really do. And so that's what I've been interested in. And I have a whole bunch of crystals. This is like one of my favorite ones. It's a piece of celestite. Super heavy, it's earthy, it's got a feel to it. Now, over the years, I started to think, okay, many of these feelings you get from crystals may be intention, but I'm not going to speculate on that part of it. What I wanted to talk about the most here was that crystals, the belief now is, and this was a kind of a, during coming up with my own theories, I came up with this theory of my own, and then I went and found other people, of course, this had been proposed hundreds of times, so it's nothing new. But when I go to search for something, before I go looking for answers, I look for my own to see if I can have an unclouded research into something. And my belief was that crystals aren't themselves inherently useful. They don't contain any information. They don't contain any energy. The crystals act as a conduit between you and this energy. Now, if you think of like a prism, when you shine a beam of light into a crystal and it creates a prism, it's diffusing that white light into its primary colors, into the colors of the rainbow, and you can see the components of that and then make assumptions or conclusions from that this light is actually all these separate things. My belief is that crystals act the same way with other forms of energy besides light. Light is just one wave among many, so we have other waves hitting these crystals as well, and they're emitting different spectrums. So this is why you might put a crystal on the end of a wand, because it's used as a conduit for this energy. Now, whether it pulls many different energies from different areas into it, or whether it just diffuses the energy passing through it, or whether it really charges up and then is used, like they say, charging them in the sun or whatever, I don't know. It's not something I can draw a conclusion on. But I find it interesting that these crystals may have healing properties, but that if people go about it thinking that carrying a rock in their pocket, it holds a certain special property by itself without really looking into why. I think that if we have the intention behind it and we understand how they work, then we can start to manifest more results. You know, when a critical mass of people start to utilize something, it becomes part of society. It takes on its own spirit, its own essence. So there's a lot of this, you know, a lot of people with crystals sitting on their shelves, and that's great, but what are we going to do with these crystals, you know, and how do they really work? So I'm curious. I don't think that these things can be measured, at least not yet, and a lot of it may be hocus pocus. I think that basing a crystal on its color, that might be valid way for some people to say, well, this is a cool colored crystal, so it must have calming effect. This is a red crystal, so it's more of a fiery, hot effect. That to me is ludicrous, because that's just taking the human sense of sight of our three primary colors and what we see, and assuming that the crystal holds the properties of our vision. You see what I mean? That everything has to follow what we think it looks like, and that's anthropomorphizing everything. You know, that's we have to put everything into a human way to understand it. That's just the nature of humans. And I think that there are these fields, these unseen fields of energy, things that we can't measure, we can't understand, that we may never understand. Maybe we're not destined to, but I'd like to know more about how these crystals work. Because everything in nature is crystalline in structure. And that's why crystals have so much value in my mind, is because they're a larger representation, you know, of everything. Everything crystallizes and takes form by vibration, by frequency, and just a snowflake forming in the air is an amazing thing to me. You know, that in itself, it's building off the energy that's being transmitted through it. And crystals don't just, you know, it's hard to express when a snowflake is forming in the air. You know, why are they so perfectly symmetrical? You know, if it's just growing random crystals, why wouldn't they just have one side that's, you know, offset from the other? They don't. They take perfect form because crystal always takes perfect form. It's really an amazing thing. I don't know. It's an amazing area of research, and I hope to do a lot more on it, but it's hard when the new age community tends to take crystals and give them attributes that haven't been confirmed or even really speculated on very long, but just assuming that because something's a certain color or shape, that's the property of it. And I think maybe it's not the property so much as the structure of the crystal and how it can transmit the energy and what types of energy we're transmitting. So by setting our intention on transmitting energy rather than saying this crystal holds energy, we can visualize the pulling in of good vibes, good energies. I don't know. Stupid thoughts, you know, coming on random. This one's really cool. This is apophyllite, and it's got mirrors inside the crystals. They're not really mirrors, of course. They're just the way the crystal's structured. It reflects back at you. When you look straight down through a crystal, it reflects back at you. And I could just sit and say, well, I guess I could say, well, these crystals allow us to reflect on who we are. Everything has to be so literal, you know. We put such a metaphors on like everything, but I think that's cool though. I mean, that's kind of being human, right? I mean, metaphors are awesome. They're one of my favorite things in this world. You know, being able to compare like life to the ebb and flow of the tides. You know, is one of my favorite metaphors. That to ride the waves, and if you try to grasp onto something, the waves will hit you harder. Sometimes it's better to just go with the flow and let it take you where it will. But at the shoreline of life, we have our emotions are flowing in and out, and all we can do is just hang on, you know. Stop trying to control the ocean. It's, I don't know. You know what I'm getting at. So what value do crystals have besides their beauty? That remains to be seen. I found a piece of this fossilized coral, actually. I just saw this sitting over there. It was, I found this in Florida last time I was there. And there's a whole bunch on the beach. They had a really big storm and it washed out a bunch of sand, and there was a bunch of old coral revealed, ancient. And I found out that coral is supposedly supposed to be good to protect babies. So I hung one of these over my baby's crib, you know. Why? Just because, you know, old wives' tales, superstitions and stuff. I don't know, but I don't know. Crystal's cool. This is my last one I'll show you. This is one I found. I've got tons of them, but I'm not going to go through all those. This is my first crystal that I found when I was hiking with Outward Bound. It was a group of, where you go hiking with a group of people for like 2 weeks and rock climbing, and I was rock climbing up this face, and I found this like, you know, 50 feet up on this ledge. I didn't realize till years later that one of the people that run the place probably planted it there. These crystals don't just appear on cliff sides like that. It was just sitting there, but somebody put it there for me to find, and I found it, and carried it with me ever since. So anyway, crystals are interesting, crystals are cool. Don't know what else to say about them. I wear them, I use them, I hold them, I think about them, but I don't believe that they really hold particular properties unless we understand how that works. And they're like capacitors, conduits. So, thoughts? Thoughts welcome.